What's up guys, Trap God Senpai back with another recap video. This time we're going to be going over the first season of Vinland Saga. Episode 1 begins with Thor's fighting on a battlefield. He's daydreaming when his comrade yells at him to regain his focus. They're severely outnumbered, and that's when Thor comes up with a plan. While Thorkel, his comrade, brings up the front line, he will go to the other boat and fight all the enemies on it by himself. This plan works as Thor decimates the soldiers, but losing his focus again, he's hit by an arrow and sent flying off the boat into the ocean. That's when he begins to fight with a man in the sea. Thor steals his weapon and slays him, right afterwards swimming to land. The next thing we see is 20 years in the future, and we see a group of Vikings in Iceland, including Thor's son, Thorfinn. Later that day, Thor finds a slave freezing to death in the snow and begins trying to save him. But soon after, the owner of the slave shows up to the village with some men ready to fight if they don't give up the slave. More tension arises when the leader of the invading group, Halfdan, mutilates one of his men in order to keep the order. Halfdan then enters Thor's home and sees the slave, saying he must bring him back to torture him and use him as a lesson to the other slaves, letting them know they can't just run away. Shortly thereafter, Thor is asking if he can buy the slave for some sheep. And using Thor's kindness, Halfdan barters him up to 8 sheep for the slave, a complete ripoff. Thor agrees and the deal is finished. But shortly after making the deal, the slave dies, meaning that Thor and his family lost 8 sheep for nothing. Episode 2 begins with a historical event of a Viking settlement in North England being ambushed by the English while they were bathing, resulting in the slaughter of everyone, including women and children. Back in Iceland, the children of the village are practicing using weapons and pretending to be in battle. Thorfinn and Foxy are pretending to be dead corpses on the battlefield, while Leif Erikson approaches Thorfinn and tells him that if he dies in the snow he'll get sick, while laughing at him. Leif is leaving for Norway to trade goods, and Thorfinn wants to come along, but Leif refuses. We then see a Viking ship land in the village looking for Thors the Troll. When Thors appears, he refers to the captain, Floki, by name and asks him what his business is here. Later they go to Thor's house, and Floki tells him that although he's a deserter, their chief says that all that belong to their crew must come back because they're getting revenge for the Viking settlement that was slaughtered, and will be taking on England in a massive battle. Thor tries to refuse, but Floki states that if he doesn't come, then he'll have to do some bad things to the village. Floki then goes to the center of town and tells everyone Thor is helping them fight, and anyone who wishes to help can join on his warship. At the same time, Thorfinn is practicing fighting with some of the other children and beats one of them pretty bad, leading to Thor's apologizing on his behalf. Meanwhile, the whole town, including Thorfinn, are excited for the war, but only a few know the real horrors of it. Thor tells Thorfinn that he has no enemies and he doesn't need to hurt others, and he should live a safe and happy life. Ending the episode, Thor takes off on his ship while Thorfinn is sleeping, and we see Floki meet with another Viking group leader Askeladd, and tell him that he will be given 100 coins to kill Thors. Episode 3 continues with the conversation between Askeladd and Floki, where Askeladd negotiates another 100 coins for killing Thors. We go back to the village and it shows Thors only took 5 villagers with him for the mission, stating that he planned to have Leif take them back home once they arrived in Norway, and he would hire mercenaries there to work with him, so none of his villagers would die in this war. The ship then sets off with 5 people rowing on one side, and Thors alone rowing on the other side with a giant oar, demonstrating his raw power. Not long after leaving, Thor hears a voice asking if it's too late to turn back, and when he responds it is, Thorfinn jumps out from a barrel, revealing that he had stowed away on the ship. The next thing we see is the ship being ambushed as debris is pushed onto the passage they are in, blocking them in, and 2 ships appear to ambush them, headed by none other than Askeladd. Thor then gives Thorfinn a dagger, saying use it only as a last resort to protect yourself. On one ship, we see Askeladd's second in command, Bjorn, and he asks Askeladd if he can take them on alone to test the mighty Troll of Yom. Askeladd agrees, but before he can start fighting, Thor jumps onto his ship and easily defeats every enemy on it, impressing Askeladd, who is amazed by Thor's combat skills. Episode 4 begins where we left off, with Thor fighting Askeladd's men. After being defeated by Thors, Bjorn decides to take a berserker mushroom, and begins fighting not only Thors but his own men, and it gives him a significant boost in power. Although he is stronger, Thor still is gaining the upper hand, and eventually defeats him with almost zero difficulty. Looking back to his ship, he sees Askeladd's men trying to board his ship, and then he throws Bjorn into the water and jumps back, breaking both the planks between the ships and sending Askeladd's men into the water. He tells Askeladd he's defeated half of his troops and that if he leaves right now, he won't pursue the matter further. But Askeladd has snipers on the hill who are about to fire arrows, but are told to wait for the signal. Thors then realizes that Askeladd will not back off and offers to fight him 1v1, and if he wins, they let him go. Askeladd agrees, and so starts the fight. The fight initially seems to be back and forth, but we soon find out that Thors was essentially playing with him, and wins the fight, telling Askeladd to be on his way and to surrender. But Askeladd responds that he will never surrender in front of his men, and that Thors will have to kill him, something that Thors promised himself he would never do again. And while Thors is thinking, Bjorn wakes up and takes Thorfinn hostage to gain the upper hand. Thors tells Askeladd that he lost and they should leave, but he isn't budging, and he tells Thors he will kill him. Thors resigns to his fate and throws his sword away, knowing they aren't after the young men but only him. Askeladd then gives the signal and his men rain arrows down on Thors. Thors, barely alive, tells Askeladd to honor their duel as the loser and let everyone be, and Askeladd swears on his ancestors that they will. And shortly thereafter, Bjorn releases Thorfinn, who runs to his dying father, crying and screaming. When Askeladd and his crew leave, they soon realize that Thorfinn's stashed away on their ship, and he comes out telling Askeladd that he will kill him to avenge his father. The episode ends with Askeladd's crew asking if they should kill Thorfinn, and him responding to let him be, because he'll die soon enough anyway. Askeladd's band of pirates sail across the sea drinking alcohol. Torgrim impatiently asks Askeladd when they will arrive at the place where they will be paid for Thors' murder. Askeladd tells him to be patient, and they're almost there. Meanwhile, Thorfinn has grown weak from a lack of food and water, and begins to cry in despair. When they land on the shore, Askeladd and his group move forward, and Thorfinn is trying to follow, but due to fatigue and being malnourished, passes out and falls down a hill. Later, a fire is lit in the distance, and to Thorfinn's shock, it is revealed that Askeladd's crew is raiding a nearby village. Afterwards, when they've all gone to sleep, Thorfinn sneaks into the village, finding Askeladd asleep in a small house. Thorfinn steals a sword from one of Askeladd's men and attempts to kill the pirate captain in his sleep. However, he can't bring himself to kill a defenseless man and leaves, and we later see that Askeladd was awake the entire time, waiting to see how it would play out. The next morning, Bjorn notices that Askeladd still seems tired, and asks if he had trouble sleeping. Askeladd replies that a noisy little fly was in his room, referencing Thorfinn. Suddenly, Thorfinn approaches Askeladd and challenges him to a duel, to avenge his father's death. Askeladd reluctantly accepts and says that Thorfinn should have killed him when he was asleep, to the boy's surprise. Thorfinn says that as the son of Thors, he would never do something so cowardly. But the fight is over almost as soon as it began, with Askeladd kicking Thorfinn away, and the crew laughing at his attempt. The next episode begins with Askeladd and his crew coming across a battlefield with many dead bodies, realizing that whoever did this was experienced soldiers. Thorfinn is still following behind, and remembers that Askeladd told him if he gained some achievement on the battlefield, he'll reward him with another duel, an opportunity to take his life. And as Thorfinn is thinking about this, he's tackled by an English soldier, and is about to be killed when Askeladd stabs the Englishman, also partially cutting Thorfinn. Thorfinn is enraged, but is soon attacked by another soldier, and is able to dodge his attack and counter with his blade, killing the enemy. This being the first time he has killed someone, he screams out, filled with emotions. We then see Askeladd and his crew engage in numerous battles, and Thorfinn killing more and more men and becoming better at fighting and growing as a Viking. Later, Thorfinn is on a scouting mission when hit by an arrow. He goes to a lake to wash off, and a mother from a nearby town takes him in and takes care of him, even covering for him with English troops, stating that he reminds her of her son. To repay her, Thorfinn tells the woman and her family to leave the area immediately, and sets a house on fire, giving Askeladd and his men the signal to come. After the woman cries, Thorfinn tells her she still has time, but she needs to leave immediately, and is reminded of his family back home. As she disappears into the crowd of villagers, Askeladd praises Thorfinn for his good work, and tells his men to kill everyone before more English soldiers arrive. Thorfinn then takes a deep breath, resetting his mind, and rejoins Askeladd and his men. The king of the Danes halts their attack, and lets his men brace for the winter, leaving Askeladd and his crew to look for work and raiding to get by. They then head to France, and Askeladd plans on stealing their treasure, and sends Thorfinn to negotiate, and tells him if he brings back the head of the general, he will again be able to challenge him. So Thorfinn goes to the French's enemy, and says Askeladd wants to help them, but in return they give him half the spoils. They agree, and Thorfinn goes on to slaughter many French troops, and eventually killing the general. Askeladd and the rest of the group show up and slaughter more Frenchmen and take their spoils. Thorfinn then delivers the head of the general to Askeladd, and is rewarded with another opportunity to kill him and avenge his father, this time with much more experience and skill under his belt. Episode 8 begins with Askeladd and the crew returning home to their village in Jutland, planning to spend the winter there, and returning with their spoils from the previous episode. This is where Thorfinn will attempt his revenge in another duel. At the beginning, it seems like Thorfinn has the upper hand, but Askeladd then gets in his head and makes him enraged, causing him to slip up and be defeated. Although Thorfinn is an incredible fighter, he's still just a child that can be easily manipulated. Thorfinn then goes to the boat as Askeladd and his men celebrate and drink. A slave girl comes up to Thorfinn and asks him if there is anything on the other side of the ocean, as she believes there to be nothing out there, and he tells her the same story he was told from Leif and his father about Vinland, the land of dreams. The episode ends with spring coming, and with it, the attack on England. We also get to see a couple new and very interesting characters make their way into the fray, such as Canute as well as Thorkel. Episode 9 starts off with a fleet of Danish and Viking ships landing in England. They're attempting to take over the London Bridge, and Askeladd is hired by Denmark, hoping to get rich off an easy victory. But things become difficult when it's shown that the English have hired Thorkel the Tall to defend them. Askeladd sends Thorfinn to battle Thorkel, who is a maniac, a giant, and more than all, battle-obsessed. He decided to turn on the Danes just for the fun of battling the strong. Thorkel, using his immense strength, throws massive boulders at their ships, sinking them if hit. Thorfinn then begins to fight with Thorkel, armed with a dagger, and Thorkel holding a giant log as a weapon. It is the classic speed versus strength fight. Thorfinn has the edge in quickness and speed, but realizes that if he's hit even one time, he will die instantly. Thorfinn manages a smart move, attacking low and even stabbing Thorkel in the hand. But Thorkel, being the monster he is, grabs the blade, and Thorfinn with it, and repeatedly slams him to the ground. As it appears Thorfinn's done, Askeladd orders his men to retreat, but Thorfinn is able to escape by cutting off Thorkel's fingers and diving in the water to get away. But before he escaped, he lets Thorkel know that he is Thorfinn, son of the legendary Thors. Thorkel is so excited from the battle and wants to fight him again. We then see that King Sweyn plans to move his army west from England and is leaving his son, Prince Canute, in charge of 4,000 men to finish taking over the stronghold. We can see that many people doubt Canute's ability to lead an army and are worried for the outcome, but the king doesn't seem fazed. Finally, we see Thorfinn again. He was caught for only a moment by Thorkel, but is suffering from serious injuries. A dislocated sprained ankle and several broken ribs. As he's struggling to keep up with Askeladd and the rest of the crew, we see him wondering why anybody would enjoy war. For most of episode 10, we see the psychological aspects of war are taking their toll on Thorfinn. He's having flashbacks of his family and clearly misses the life he used to live. It seems so perfect looking back. The next major thing we see is that Thorkel finds out that Canute is leading the Danish army and is very excited. And with that, he takes the fight to them. Askeladd and his men are separated from the main army, looking to make some money, when a messenger from the prince tells him he needs to come help and that Thorkel has captured Prince Canute. Askeladd immediately becomes very excited and kills all the messengers, stating that they can rescue the prince and sell him as a hostage to the kingdom paying the most. Bjorn talks to Askeladd, asking if he has a plan to deal with Thorkel because of how much of a monster he is, and Askeladd brushes him off, saying who knows, and that they must bet on themselves and not let this opportunity pass them by. The troops are all excited and ready for this incredible challenge. Episode 11 starts off with some of the English army attempting to rescue Prince Canute. When they arrive, it looks like Thorkel is willing to hand the prince back to them, but then insults their manhood and asks if they are such cowards they are scared to fight with even 2,000 people. This baits them into attacking, and Thorkel gets what he wants, a massive fight. At the same time, Askeladd and his group decide to set fires around the area as smokescreens, and send Thorfinn in to rescue the prince from Thorkel. Eventually, Thorfinn and Thorkel come face to face, where he lets Thorfinn know that he knows his father as well as his mother, and that Thors is the only man he ever met in his life that's stronger than him. After saying his piece, Thorkel leaves as the fire rages, and Thorfinn returns with the prince. The next thing we see is Askeladd talking to a fisherman, asking him to deliver a letter for him. After a short conversation, the fisherman agrees and sets off. We find out soon that Askeladd and his men will have to travel across Wales to get to their destination. But the problem is that Wales is extremely hostile to them, and they are transporting an enemy prince, so problems are sure to arise. But Askeladd reassures Canute and his aide that he will assign Thorfinn to Prince Canute and ensure his safety. At the same time, we get to see that Thorkel is indeed following Askeladd and Thorfinn, hoping to be able to fight him again soon. Next thing we know, an official of Wales is willing to help Askeladd and his men travel safely through the territory, and in exchange, they make Prince Canute promise that when he becomes king, they will never interfere in the business of Wales. Things are seemingly good, but soon after they set off, they're greeted by two messengers from the city, looking to greet the prince and help in any way they can. The episode ends with the messengers revealing their plan of an ambush and taking all their troops out of hiding to get ready for the fight. As Askeladd and his crew are preparing to fight off the enemies, he tells them to lower their weapons, and instead tries to talk to them, knowing that if they have a battle, then they have no chance of being able to travel safely through the country. Askeladd then reveals that although he is part Dane, he also has Welsh blood, and his plan is to make Canute king and manipulate him into a non-aggression treaty with Wales. Now that Askeladd has successfully talked his way out of the fight, they are able to travel through the country. The episode ends off with us seeing Thorfinn teasing Canute for never talking and being a coward. And for the first time, Canute speaks up, saying that he can talk, but he knows that his words have power and doesn't want to create problems by opening his mouth. We next see a girl named Anne and her family in a small village. They seem to be poor, but have each other, and are having dinner and talking about their religion, stating good men go to heaven and evil men go to hell. They then make a comment that the Danes are certainly evil. Well, Anne had stolen a ring and left it in a hiding spot in a hollowed tree, and after dinner goes to retrieve her treasure. As she gets to the tree that is just outside the village, she sees Askeladd and his men and hides. We see them taking inventory of food and realize there's not enough food to feed the villagers and the men. So Askeladd makes the decision and tells his men to kill everyone in the village, men, women, and children. Kill them all. Episode 15 begins by showing us Thorkel. He's drinking with his comrades when he hears the news that they are ready to surrender to the Danes. This makes him sad, as he knows if there's no war, he can't fight anyone. But he doesn't have to be sad for long. The young girl Anne from the previous episode made her way to a nearby village and told them about what had happened, and they in turn went to Thorkel for help getting rid of the Vikings. Thorkel wouldn't usually care about this, but he knows there's a high possibility that Thorfinn and Askeladd are there, and he tells his men to ready up, and they'll be leaving soon for the village. We then see Askeladd has come to the realization that if he wants to control the prince, he needs to get rid of his right-hand man. He doesn't want any competing voices in the prince's ear. As the aforementioned right-hand man, Ragnar, is about to die from his wounds at the hands of Askeladd's men, he tells Askeladd that he must be ready for a war to make Canute the next king. He states that the king sent Canute to command the army so that he would die in battle and the throne could be handed over to his brother. Askeladd listens to him and makes him a promise that he will protect Canute at all costs. The next thing we see is Askeladd telling Canute that Ragnar died in a fight with the Englishmen, covering his tracks as well as putting a bad taste in his mouth for the English. Canute seems to be broken mentally and collapses to the ground. We then see Askeladd's men torturing an enemy scout, but he refuses to give up any information. This is when Askeladd starts cutting off his fingers, asking for information on how they knew their location, how many people were coming, and when to expect them. They eventually get him to talk, and he tells them that he can't wait to see Danes tear other Danes apart, and tells them that Thorkel is coming for them. This causes a commotion, and they pack up their sleds and leave in the middle of the night, not wanting to have to fight Thorkel again. The next day, Askeladd and his men are still trying to outrun Thorkel, but he's gaining on them. As a last resort effort, they decide to break a bridge they crossed, hoping to slow him down. But upon dismantling the bridge, Thorkel shows up at the top of the hill and launches a spear from what must have been hundreds of yards away and instantly impales 4 men on his spear, killing them. The episode ends with Askeladd's men being fed up with his decision-making and scared to death of Thorkel. They decide to turn on Askeladd and hold him hostage. The next episode begins right where we left off, with Askeladd's men telling him to leave and leave the prince behind, thinking that all Thorkel wants is the prince and he would leave them alone after he got what he wanted. This leads Askeladd to reveal his true colors. He states that he hates Danes, and he thinks they're all swine, and immediately decapitates 2 of his former men. Thorfinn steps in as well and helps him dispatch a few more of their former comrades. Once he opens up a hole, Bjorn takes off with the prince and Thorfinn, and Askeladd is staying behind to buy them time. At the same time, Thorkel sees the fight happening and gets a serious case of FOMO and rushes to them. Thorfinn heads back to save Askeladd as Thorkel arrives. Thorkel doesn't respect any of the rebels in Askeladd's group and tells his men to kill them all. The fighting begins and Thorfinn arrives to see Thorkel next to a badly injured Askeladd and states that he will be the one to kill Askeladd, and if Thorkel touches a hair on his head, he'll kill him right then and there. The episode ends with Thorkel and Thorfinn having a battle to see who gets to kill Askeladd, Thorfinn with his daggers and Thorkel with a giant battle axe. Thorfinn and Thorkel begin battling again, same as before, speed versus strength, and it seems to be anyone's game. This is when Thorfinn begins to ask Thorkel about his father. He lets him know that his mother had noble blood, not his father, and that Thor's had risen in rank due to his skill with the sword. After a short break, Thorkel tells him that Thor's was stronger than him, and to prove he really is his son, and that if he can entertain him, he might answer more questions about his father. Before getting back to the fight, we see the prince having an emotional moment with the priest about his fallen friend, and leads them to contemplate a lot of philosophical questions, like what love really means. So far in the fight, Thorfinn has managed to lay many scratches on Thorkel, but it seems like they're all flesh wounds and nothing more. Then Thorkel lands a massive kick, and while Thorfinn mitigated the initial damage, the kick launched him about 30 feet in the air, and he lands on the ground being knocked out instantly. Now back to the prince, he has found purpose, and is able to calm down a berserker Bjorn while the priest exclaims that he's witnessed a miracle. The prince then states that he is going to see Thorkel, and that from now on he will be acting just as any king should. Episode 19 starts with Thorkel allowing Askeladd to tend to Thorfinn's wounds so they can continue their battle. And like we have seen with the previous Thorfinn-Askeladd battle, Thorfinn is being consumed by his emotions, so Askeladd is trying to give him advice. We enter a flashback showing that Thorkel is the leader's brother, making him Thorfinn's great uncle. The flashback takes place right after Thor's disappearance, and Thorkel catches him trying to escape with his wife and daughter. Thor tells him that he is leaving, but this causes Thorkel to remind him that deserters are sentenced to death and start a fight with him. Thor easily wins the fight, and when Thorkel wakes up, they're long gone. Back to the present, Askeladd tells Thorfinn about a plan he has to defeat Thorkel. They wait until he's about to win the battle, and Askeladd blinds him with the light reflecting off his sword. At that moment, Thorfinn hits him in the head, which is his weak spot, knocking him out, and then jumps on top of him and gouges his eye out. Thorkel's men jump in and are about to kill Thorfinn when Thorkel commands them to stop, saying he lost the duel. At this moment, the prince shows up and lays down the law, saying that his father doesn't care if he lives or dies, and that he's going back home to take the throne by force, gathering some manpower in the process. Episode 20 starts off with Canute returning home with Thorkel, Thorfinn, and Askeladd. This is when they begin their plans. Canute instructs Thorkel to go make up with all the generals in the army by drinking with them to grow their influence. He tells Askeladd to come see the king with him and to tell him his opinion of him later, and tells Thorfinn he has plans for him in the future. The next thing that happens is the fated meeting. We see Thorfinn and Askeladd accompany Canute to see his father. This is where they learn that he had set up an ambush to kill Canute, but thanks to Askeladd's quick thinking, he is able to talk to the king and get him to reconsider, but not before the king ascertains that Askeladd is the son of a slave. And for some reason, this causes Askeladd to boil with rage, but knowing the situation, he refrains from action, and they're able to walk away with their lives. The next thing we know, we are seeing Thorkel drinking and laughing with all the soldiers, and we are introduced to Ragnar's brother, Gunnar. And although he seems loyal to the prince, Askeladd thinks that he is hiding things from them, and he is going to figure out what that is. Episode 21 begins with Askeladd staging an assassination on the prince. They used a female slave dressed as Canute to fool the town into thinking that Canute was actually killed by an assassin. At the same time, Thorfinn sees the shooter take aim at Canute and kills him, but not before the shot was fired. This event leads Thorfinn and Leif Erikson to reunite after such a long time in a really heartwarming moment. Leif tries to get Thorfinn to come home and see his family, but he tells him that as long as Askeladd is alive, he'll never go back, and his only purpose in life is to avenge his father and kill Askeladd. Moving forward, we see Askeladd, Thorkel, Canute, and Gunnar all talking about their plan they pulled off, and Gunnar excuses himself, saying he has some things to do. This is when Askeladd tells Canute that he is almost certainly betraying them, and sent Thorfinn to spy on him. Thorfinn confirms their suspicions, and the next thing we see is him about to fight Askeladd again the next day. But before they can start, the critically injured Bjorn wants to go out like a warrior, and asks Askeladd to fight him to the death. Askeladd takes care of him in one strike, while proclaiming that Bjorn was his only friend in this life. And with that, we move on to Thorfinn vs. Askeladd once again. So the fight begins, and it's looking pretty even, but as we soon find out, Askeladd knows everything about Thorfinn. His weaknesses, his style, what each movement means, and he can read his moves even better than Thorfinn can read himself. Askeladd throws away his sword, and instead beats Thorfinn with his fists until he's unconscious, and when it seems like he's about to kill him, Canute runs over to stop it. But Askeladd stabs the sword into the ground. We all know that he wouldn't kill Thorfinn. But this is when Askeladd tells him of his past. His father was a Norse Viking, and his mother a slave. And when she got sick, his father started treating her like she was a dog instead of a person, and not caring for her even a bit. When he was young and his father was about to kill his slave mother, he grabbed a sword and fought his father, gaining his respect and leading him to tell Askeladd that he has potential. From that moment onward, Askeladd lived in the main castle due to his father's fondness of him. Askeladd did all this to lower his guard, and then one night went into his chambers and murdered his father, stating he never cared about him for a moment, and it was all an act leading up to this moment. Back in the present, he tells Thorfinn that he is nothing more than a hunting dog, who will fight even Thorkel as long as he promises him a duel, and that he has been very useful to him, but he will never be able to kill him. The episode ends with Canute consoling Thorfinn, while it seems that Thorfinn is losing his sanity. Episode 23 starts off at the day of the banquet, when Askeladd will see what the king's intentions are after his fake assassination plot. And things seem to be going well at first, letting Askeladd know that he has the upper hand, at least for the moment. That is, until the king announces they will fight Wales in the spring and take over their land. This is crushing for Askeladd, who views Wales as his true home, and while he's trying to think of a way out of the upcoming battle, Floki notices his emotions and tells the king that there's some connection between Askeladd and Wales. At the same time, Thorfinn got in a fight with some random people on the street and was thrown into prison for the time being. While in there, Leif Erikson comes by to try and get Thorfinn to come home once again, saying they can even try and set off for Vinland after they see his family. But Thorfinn doesn't want to hear it and tells him not to speak about home anymore. Back with Askeladd, we see the king call him up for his reward for his achievements, but Askeladd thinks there's something more to it and that the king may be plotting something. The final episode begins after the king called Askeladd up to the front of the banquet hall to receive his reward. Askeladd asks him to reconsider taking over Wales, stating the land isn't fertile and it isn't worth the cost, and that if they're really just doing this to gain respect, let him talk to the Welsh and get them to submit. This is when the king leans in and tells Askeladd he can either have Canute or Wales. He says he doesn't really care about Wales and that if he kills Canute and joins him, he won't have any need to go after Wales after all. At the same time, Thorfinn boards a boat headed home with Leif, but at the last second changes his mind and heads back into town. Now is when shit really hits the fan. Askeladd tells the king he's disgusting and that the crown shouldn't belong to him, and cuts the king's head off at the same moment. Reading the situation, Canute calls for the Danes to kill Askeladd, and Askeladd begins slaughtering all of them, while the noble try and leave. At the same moment, we see Thorfinn fighting his way in. Seeing Askeladd in trouble, he wants to help him. At this point, it's clear that no matter how bad he wants to kill him, he has genuine feelings for Askeladd and views him as a father figure. Right when Thorfinn makes it to him, Canute stabs Askeladd in the stomach, realizing that Askeladd chose to save Wales and Canute while sacrificing himself, and this is how he saw it panning out. As Askeladd is bleeding out, he tells Thorfinn to kill him and he can end it all. This angers Thorfinn, who states it wasn't supposed to happen like this, and he wanted to kill him in a duel. After Thorfinn gets his words out, Askeladd dies, and this breaks Thorfinn, who seems to have lost his mind and is incapable of thinking straight. He turns around and lunges at Canute, aiming to cut his throat, but is stopped by Thorkel after only cutting his face. Thorfinn is restrained while screaming out like an animal at Askeladd's body, while at the same time Canute picks up the crown and declares himself the new and rightful king. Hey guys, just wanted to thank all my viewers for watching my content. These recap videos are a lot harder to make than some of my other content, so if you enjoyed, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more content. Once again, I appreciate all of you, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!